Okay, now we move. So we've got interviews covered pretty well. I think you've got a pretty good sense of that. I think the other thing that was the most valuable piece for me for interviews was reviewing them, audio tape or video, but make sure you watch what you did. That's when you find your errors. You find little style things that change the feel in the room, your ums, your ahs. Same as when I teach. How many times I say is a problem. It interferes with the message. So consider that in the interview, the pause, the value of the pause of silence. So let's move on. So there's a real good sense of qualitative research. I already talked about case study earlier to get an idea of that. Interviewing is a significant piece of case study. It is, and again, goes to the qualitative approach. It observing. So you might interview people. You're going to observe for a while, maybe observe first, interview later. Part of determining which way to do it makes matters. The same quantitative to qualitative. You might run a survey to get a general sense of a population, and then in-depth interviews to back it up. So you do the quantitative, qualitative interconnected. You might do a small set of interviews and determine really key issues from different groups of people or subcategories within a group. And then you run a survey to get a larger numbers to support your findings from your smaller data source. So the issue becomes, and the course, I get some of this sounds almost repetitive, I think, to me, but it's the idea that the quantitative and qualitative is this balance piece. It's not always one or the other. They, in many ways, support each other if you can get your head around what it is you're trying to do in research. So, the observation method you shifted to, you did the coffee shop, and in that coffee shop, you got to see what people were doing, observe, listen if you were close enough. But otherwise, think about how much assumption went into that. And here's where bias comes in, which is the very beginning of the course. The hardest part in research sometimes is removing your bias, observation bias. So when you look at Milgram, that Milgram experiment that I had to look at, what was the population of the people he chose? Who was his sample set to talk about the authority issues? In the video that I posted for you, certainly it comes out of that. There's a reflection in there that could look quite biased. When the guy uses the term normal people, what does he mean by normal people? Normal people like me. What does that mean? Is that uh, it's not a generation issue. Is it a color issue? Is it a economic status issue? Is it got something to do with where they live? Certainly, Milgram's research was all done in one neighborhood. The neighborhood probably reflects a socioeconomic status.